and welcome to the first RetroHour podcast event at the Retro Computer Museum in Leicester. Woo! Our first time here. Now today, of course, we are honoured to bring you one of our dear friends, a very special guest. I guess we have some Commodore fans in the audience. Hands up. Who had a Commodore 64? Anyone have an Amiga 500? Amiga 600?
Yeah.
I told you they were going to be here, David. Well, today, of course, it is our pleasure to welcome Mr. David Pleasance. Now, of course, you may know that David is currently writing a book all about his time at Commodore, and kind of give it an overview of Commodore. It's called Commodore: The Inside Story. Have you got a few updates on the book?
Yes, indeed. In fact, we announced Friday, that I have once again delayed the book even further. But there's very good reason for it, and I hope you'll forgive me and understand. But I was at the Amiga 32 event in Neuss in Germany a few weeks ago, 3 or 4 weeks ago, and I was very fortunate to once again catch up with old friends of mine, including Ron Nicholson, who was an engineer with Commodore doing 64 and products around that era. And also I met with Jeff Porter, who is the gentleman who actually designed the Amiga 500, which is really the most significant Amiga, I think, in our range. Certainly in terms of volume and getting us the coverage around the world. Anyway, I've got those gentlemen to agree to write chapters for me for the book. And one of the reasons for this is that it was never my intention for this book to be a story about David Pleasance. It's a story about Commodore from the inside. However, what was happening, of course, is that because I'm relating all the stories, it was tending to be a story about David Pleasance, which is not what I wanted. So I figured that by getting other people's perspective, but also people from the inside, getting their perspective on various aspects of Commodore, that it would give it a broader and be more in line with what my objectives were in the beginning. Also got somebody you may well know, a guy called Tim Cheney, who was head of Virgin Games. What a lot of people don't know is that he actually worked for Commodore. He was with Commodore just before I joined, and we worked alongside each other, and in fact we had a couple of run-ins. We weren't exactly the best of friends, but anyway, he's written just a very, very short few lines really about his time, and I love it because it's the real story. He said to me, do you want to change anything? Do you want to tame it down? No way, because it's true, and we're good friends now, but at the end of the day, this has to be the truth. So anyway, for that reason, I can't tell you when. My guess is going to be March, April time before I actually do get the book out, because I'm now in the hands of these people who are very kindly writing chapters for us. I hope you understand, and I'm certain the product will be better for it. I'm still waiting for RJ Michael, who has promised me from before Pontius was a pilot that he would write a chapter for me. I'm still waiting for it. And that, in the end, that I may end up having to print the book without it because I just can't tie him down. But anyway, that's an update, and as far as the book is concerned, and I hope those of you that have backed the Kickstarter, hope you'll forgive me. Those that haven't backed the Kickstarter, please go and look at my website, which is called downtimepublishing.com, and you can pre-order the book there. Okay.
Excellent. Well, Ravi and I are going to talk to David and ask him some questions, and then you guys will have a chance to do a quick Q&A at the end if you've got any burning questions you want to ask David. Of course, people do know you because you're the managing director of Commodore UK, but you did actually spend a lot of time with Commodore all around the world, didn't you?
Yes, indeed, and I'm very proud of that fact, actually, because life deals its cards to you. Sometimes they're great cards, and sometimes they're not such good cards. But I built a good career at Commodore UK, had some very good successes, things like the Batman pack, which changed the world really. It was interesting to see that Sega and Nintendo followed suit doing packs more or less straight after we did. But as a result of all the successes that I had, I was offered the opportunity to take over as general manager of Commodore International Limited, which was based in Basel in Switzerland, in a very specific canton or county called Aisch. And the reason it was there was because, of course, Commodore paid zero tax in that particular environment. And interestingly, while I was there and I was looking after all the export countries, the countries where Commodore did not have an operating subsidiary. And so initially I'm looking after 36 countries. Eventually I became 37 because I ended up signing up and doing business in India as well. But the thing about being in Aisch with zero tax was that everybody's expenses from around the world crossed my desk, including Mediali's. so I know how much he spent and what he spent it on. So that's quite interesting. But no, having the opportunity, the best way I can explain it, when it works, is that there are two types of salespeople. There are hunters and farmers, and I am a hunter. I love to get out there and hunt and grow and develop things. And the idea of taking over at CEL was a phenomenal opportunity for me. But having said that, it's why I became fat. It's absolutely the truth, because the role I had was, when I first took over the role, my predecessor, he used to leave Basel and fly to, let's say, Istanbul, do some business and then fly back again. And then he'd go to Helsinki and then fly back again, and so on and so forth. But when I took over, I decided I wanted to be more efficient than that. So I would go from A to B, from B to C, and C to D, and so on, and do a round trip, which was a lot more efficient. It also meant that I stayed over weekends, which I paid for myself. I didn't put that on the company. But I was able to stay over weekends and see and experience other countries, which is a wonderful thing. I mean, everybody who travels knows that. But what was happening was, a good example was that I would fly into Istanbul, I'd get met off the plane, and I would be taken straight to my hotel, and then I would go out with my clients and we'd have a nice big dinner and lots of wine, and then the following morning I'd get met and taken to breakfast, and then you'd have lunch, and then you do the same thing again in the next country, day after day after day, and before you know it, you've put on this. So that's my excuse anyway. But it was wonderful fun, and being able to to take companies and improve their business, again through the use of good marketing tactics and so on. It was really a phenomenal opportunity. And I remember particularly when I went to Mediali and I said, why aren't we doing any business with India? And of course he was a Pakistani, and he said, we're not doing any business with them in India, la-di-la-di-la, And I said, but that's crazy. That's a bias that doesn't make any sense. So, cut a long story short, he said, how are you going to get a customer over there? And I said, it was pretty simple. I said, I'm going to place adverts in the Times of India, looking for people who are currently in retail distribution of consumer electronics, and let's see what happens. And then I'll go out there and I'll interview them and appoint somebody. And he said it wouldn't work, but it did. And I ended up with a phenomenal distributor out there. They weren't the biggest. In fact, all they were huge Amiga fans. But they had a business plan which they put together, which they did a whole PowerPoint presentation on, and they really had gone to a lot of trouble. Anyway, cut a long story short, the biggest problem with selling into India was that the import duty on finished goods was massive, really, really high import duty. So I had a chat with my guys and I said, look, I can't fund this, but why don't you guys look to setting up an assembly operation, not a manufacturing, just assembly, so we will supply you with component parts and you just put them together. That way they'll be much cheaper to the consumer. So they set about and they devised a business plan, and then I said, right, now you arrange a meeting with the bank, I'll come with you, and we'll see what we can do. So we go to the State Bank of India, and two gentlemen from the State Bank of India, my two guys from my company and myself, and we did a whole presentation to them and showed them what the savings would be and how much money more they would make and so on and so forth. So when everything had been finished, and it was a beautiful presentation, very, very well done, the main guy of these two from the bank said, okay, that's fine, we understand all that, but what we want to know is what's in it for us. And I said, yeah, well, I've just explained to you, the bank is going to get this and the bank's going to... No. What's in it for us, him and me? And you wanted backhanders, which, of course, I just said, goodbye, gentlemen, got up and walked out. But that's a really good experience, that, when you experience it yourself firsthand, of something that everybody kind of knows goes on, but when you actually see it and you're a part of it, it's quite interesting. So that was CEL. I was with CEL 2 years, and all the time I'd been with CEL, and before that I'd been asking Mediali, let me loose in America, because America, the sales company, which is called Commodore Inc., a sales company in America, were what I call sales prevention officers. It's true. It's absolutely true. And so anyway, eventually, and you'll love this story. I was at a meeting in Frankfurt. Mediali used to hold his meetings either in London or Frankfurt or New York, whichever he felt fancied. And we just had a general managers meeting, and I was working still in Switzerland, but I still had an office in London. Anyway, we finished the meeting. I think it was about midday, and I got up to leave, and he says, "Pleasance, come here, sit your ass down here." He said, "You've been nagging at me for 3 or 4 years now to let you loose in America, and as of now, I'm going to let you do it." He said, "In fact," I'll tell you when it was. I think it was January the 4th. He said, in fact, he said, "I want you on the 7 o'clock flight out of London to New York. I want you to fly from New York over to Las Vegas, because it was the CES show that we always went to, the winter CES, always at 5, 6, 7 or thereabouts of January. Meet up with Jim Dion, who is the president of Commodore Inc. And now he thinks you're going to be reporting to him, but you're not. Just go along with it." He said, "You report directly to me." Anyway, what he didn't realise, and it was really good for me, I did manage to get on that 7 o'clock flight out of London, but he hadn't realised it was actually Concorde. Because he used to travel it all the time and never even thought about it. So he made me book the flight, and it was Concorde. So I got to fly on Concorde once, which was really nice. Anyway, so cut a long story short, we had a few days in CES in Vegas, and then I arrived in Westchester, where Commodore was based, just outside Philadelphia. And the first thing I did was I wanted to go and see the engineers, because I've always known that without the engineers, we haven't got a company or anything. Imagine my surprise when I go up and see the engineers, and we had 7 Amiga engineers. 7. And get this, we had 40 PC engineers. This is in 1993, January 93. Why in God's name would anybody, first of all, why would you design and manufacture your own PCs when they were coming out of the Far East so much cheaper than we could have got? If we wanted to stay in the PC business, which was questionable anyway, what we should have done is to have licensed the name CBM, which at one time was as valuable as IBM. It really was. And we should have got other people to manufacture and got a royalty from them just for using our name. And that way we're in the PC business, but we're not spending any money. We're not investing any money in a product which, let's be honest about it, in those days, Intel was a company that used to eat its own young. Every few months they'd release a brand new chip which was better, more powerful, and cost less than the one they'd just previously released.
Still crap now.
Well, that's as may be. But anyway, the other thing, and certainly what was part of our plan, in our business plan, ultimately, Colin Proudfoot and I put a business plan together. Not only were we going to say to any PC company that wanted to do it, that would only have been one, we'll license you the CBM name, we would then say to them, no, oh, by the way, if you would like our sales force to sell your product for you on a commission basis, happy to do so. Because we had all the distribution channels throughout Europe. So, from that point of view, it would have been an absolute no-brainer. So no money's invested. All we would have to be responsible for was our own quality control to make certain that people that were selling something with our name on it, that the quality was up to scratch. It's a no-brainer. So anyway, it turns out that the reason why we got 40 PC engineers there was because Mehdi Ali, in his infinite wisdom, had just appointed a brand new head of engineering, a guy called Bill Sidness, and he was from IBM. He was responsible for the incredibly awful PC Junior, and it turns out that he gave jobs to 40 of his mates. What do you think about that? Incredible, isn't it?
Become Amiga engineers.
Exactly. I mean, but this all really harks back to the fact that when I joined Commodore in June of 1983, and I can hand on heart say from that day forward, I always knew that it was inevitable that something would happen with Commodore badly, because from the day I joined them, and what I can see before that, they never, ever had any kind of a business plan. They stumbled from one crisis to the next. They employ new people, and you have the engineers working on some project, and the new person will go in and say, what are you working on? Oh, I'm doing such and such. Oh, stop that. I want you to do this. And they produced machines that nobody ever asked for. Products like the Plus 4. Sorry, Dan. I know it was Dan's first one.
I had a C16.
Yeah, well,
machine, so
I'm not alone.
No. Anyway, so just to get back to the reason why Commodore US was such a disaster. First, it goes back to the days of the Commodore 64. When the 64 was released, let's be honest about it, it was hot, very hot property. And in America, they had their distribution channels, or the retail channels. But what happened is that one retailer, namely Kmart, decided that they wanted to make the Commodore 64 a lost leader line, and they decided to sell the Commodore 64, having paid $98 for it from Commodore. They wanted to sell it for $99. And that meant anybody went into Kmart, they would then sell them the cassette drive and the games and the joysticks and all of that at full margin. Now, I know it's illegal, but you cannot allow one retailer to dominate the market like that. What you should have done, and what happened, of course, is that they just let it happen because they took the viewpoint, oh, we're selling everything we can make, so who cares? What it meant, of course, was that all the other retailers stopped stocking it. Why the hell would you buy something for 98 quid to sell for 99? It's ridiculous. So they just stopped selling the Commodore 64, stopped stocking it, which meant that we lost all of our distribution except for Kmart. And then, of course, what happens is, I think Sega came along with a product, or Nintendo, I can't remember who it was, and they said, you can sell this product for $100 and you can make them 35% margin on it. So they dropped Commodore 64 like a hot brick. So that's one reason why we had no distribution in the in the US, because they'd lost all their channels. Now that is sales prevention, however you look at it. Okay. Now when I got there in January 93, I called a very good team of salespeople. I called my team together and I said, right, what the hell's going on? All I want is the truth. What is going on? Well, they said, David, unfortunately, we can't sell anything to any of our customers because they all owe us money and nobody's paying their bills. Oh, that's a good start. Why? We don't know. They had no idea. Okay. Make some appointments and get me in front of them. Let's get to the bottom of this and find out what's going on. Well, the very first appointment I made was with Sears, as it happens in Chicago. Sears Tower, I think we were on the 15th floor or something. And there was about 12 Sears executives sat around a boardroom table. Me and my rep, Steve Salas, I believe his name was. Anyway, so I sat down, introduced myself and said, okay, gentlemen, I've been with Commodore, I think it was like 8 or 9 years at that time. And, I've got a good reputation, and we're doing really, really well in Europe and so on and so forth. And so I've come over to try and get the business moving, because, we think there's a lot of opportunity that you guys, for whatever reason, aren't fulfilling yet. And I said, so, I give you my word that you'll get from me nothing but the truth, and all I ask from you is the same. Fine. So I said, okay, now gentlemen, as I understand it, you guys are not paying your bill. Can you please explain to me why you're not paying your bill? And they said, this is quite simple, Mr. Pleasance, we're waiting for Commodore to come and take all our stock back. Well, I said, I've never known Commodore in all the years I've been with him to be a lending library. At which point in time, the main guy pushed a letter across the desk to me, across the table. And it was a letter signed by Jim Dion, who was president of Commodore Inc. And it was sale or return, signed by him. And guess what it was sale or return on? CD TVs. And every major retailer in America had been sold up to the gun on CD TVs that nobody bought. Now let's be honest about it. It was a product that was way too ahead of its time. It's a product that needed to be really sold. And can you imagine the people in Sears selling a CD TV? I mean, they're having a trouble ringing the till up and putting something in a plastic bag. So it was completely the wrong thing to have sold them, sale or return. So that was what I was faced with when I went there to sort it out. So it really caught me by surprise, because we'd never done that before, never. So anyway, I thought for a few minutes. I said, okay, gentlemen, I said, I told you I'm a man of my word, and Commodore is a company of honour. I'll respect that, and I will arrange for everything, and I will arrange your credit notes. However, gentlemen, you do leave me in a bit of a difficult situation, because I don't really want to start my career in the US taking back, $250,000 worth of product from you. I said, and on the other hand, we've got products. I said, to be honest with you, you should never have been sold CD TVs. It's completely the wrong profile for your stores. And I apologise for that. It's crazy. I said, but on the other hand, we've got products that are selling in Europe like crazy. The Amiga 500 selling fantastically well, which it was. And I said, how about you do me a big favour? How about you give me an order for Amiga 500s to exactly the same value of what I'm taking back from you in CD TVs. And if you do that for me, I will make a special pack just for Sears that you can sell on your own, that you're not in competition with anybody else. And they went for it. So that's how I sorted out the retail channels in the US. I did the same thing with everybody. One company stitched me up. I took the product back, and then they reneged on the order. You get that from time to time. That was a company called Tandy Named Brand. I don't know if you know Tandy, who do a Radio Shack, but they've got a chain of stores called Tandy Name Brand, where they sell name brand products. But that guy, Hank, his name was, he stitched me up. But that's life. But the interesting part of this story, though, is that it came the quarter end, and I'm actually on holiday in the States, and I've flown my two sons over for a holiday, and I actually had a boat which I kept down at Rehoboth Beach, about an hour and a half from Philly, and I took my boys there for the weekend. And anyway, that quarter end was the meeting that I should have been at, although I'd excused myself to go through all the figures. And Mehdi Ali rang me up, and he went ballistic. He said, what the F is this? And we're taking all this every product back. And I said to him, well, I said, hasn't Jim Dion told you? No, tell me what. I said, well, ask Jim for the envelope I gave him to give to you. So he got the envelope and opened it up, and of course inside was all the copies of all the sale or return things. And I said, here's the guy who did it. I said, I've just sorted it out. And yes, it's a hit. And I don't know what the hell we're going to do with all these CD TVs. But you want to trade in the US, you have no option. You've got to honour what was written by the president of the sales company. We had to do it. But now we are trading.
So that's the story of the US.
You don't I still have those CDs.
Whatever Commodore had, they've all gone now, everything.
Well, you mentioned Europe, and we were always told that Germany was doing a lot better than England, and there was a big rivalry between Commodore Germany and the UK. Could you tell us more about the German situation?
Yeah, it turned out to be actually what I suspected, in that the only what's the word? The only trait that Mediali had was that he used to try and play one off against another, and he always used to tell us that Germany was outselling us, and yet I knew they couldn't be, because we were selling such big volumes. And the crazy thing is, and I still to this day don't understand why, Commodore should have forced all the European countries to replicate what we were doing with the bundles, because our target audience was the same age of kids, the same, what they would want, and we were providing for them. And all we had to do was to do the packaging in different languages, but keep it, common. Then we would have got an even better deal from our software companies. Everybody would have benefited because the numbers would have been increased dramatically. But Commodore never did. And I really don't understand that. Again, like in advertising, every Commodore subsidiary was given a percentage. I think it was probably 5% of their turnover to use in advertising and marketing. Now, we produced pretty damn good TV commercials. But imagine if we'd have produced a TV commercial and at the same time you do it, you dub it in all the different languages, so everybody uses it. I mean, I can remember saying to Mediali, I went on holiday and I drove up to Heathrow, and there's a big advert for Sony at Heathrow Airport. And we landed in Malaga, and there's exactly the same advert in Spanish. That's good business marketing, because you've got the common message all over the world. So I tried to get them to replicate, and they just wouldn't do it. Anyway, the answer to your question is that when Colin and I formally put together a business plan, and we paid to do for the pack to do our due diligence, we then saw all the figures, and we've been outselling Germany by a long way for a very long time, and it was a nice feeling to know that we had.
Well, you did mention the Commodore Plus 4. Does everyone here remember the Plus 4 and the Commodore 16?
Yeah.
Came out after the Commodore 64. Wasn't compatible with any of the software, very little of the hardware. Bit of a disaster for Commodore, but it actually treated you quite well, didn't it, that machine?
Yeah, you're very naughty. Now, this is a really interesting story, actually. We had a brand new MD come in, a guy called Nick Bessie, who I really liked, and sadly he didn't stay very long. That's another story. He got poached within a few weeks. He was actually from IBM, but he was a marketing guy, and he was the first savvy person that I'd had the pleasure of working with. So anyway, we were stuck in the UK. I remember we were at Corby, and we had our own manufacturing assembly plant there in Corby, and we were stuck with a whole load of Plus 4s. Nobody wanted them. We couldn't give them away. And anyway, he came up to me and he said, "Right, David," he said, "I've got this instruction from head office. We've got to try and liquidate our Plus 4s." He says, "What can we do?" He says, "Is there any way we can incentivize your team, my sales team?" And I said, "Well, actually, to be honest with you, it would need something a little special to incentivize them, not just money." Okay, he said, "What about champagne?" Absolutely true. I said, "Yes, that's a bloody good idea. I like that." So anyway, he came up with a set of figures. I can't remember. For every 100 machines, you get a bottle of champagne, whatever it was. I can't remember the figures. Anyway, he also gave us a new price. So immediately, I was able to put a bundle together and 10 pieces of software, package it, and so on and so forth. So I had all of the major retailers. So my guys were stuck really. And anyway, I went out and I sold the whole lot in one go to Lasky's. And anyway, I decided that the other guys had actually sold some, so I gave them some. I was going to give them some champagne anyway because they'd earned it. That was fine. But a few days later, a guy came into the office in Corby. This is absolutely true. I swear to you. And he was a real Cockney. And is it okay if I swear? Because
Yeah, sure.
is that all right? Because I just want to say, tell a story. This guy comes in, and he says, "Right," he says, "I've got fucking 25 million quid to spend." and I want to buy all your Commodore 64s, the whole lot. I think it was about September. And I just said, not a chance. And he sat down, absolutely true, he put his feet up on my desk and was picking his nose.
It wasn't Alan Sugar, was it?
No, it wasn't Alan Sugar. It wasn't Alan Sugar. Actually, the guy was representing Greens. Do you remember Greens? Which is what turned eventually the guy bought Topshop. The guy that's been in trouble recently with his pension.
Phil Green.
No. What's his name? Philip. Was it Phil Green? Yes, I'm sorry. You're right. You are right. Yeah. Anyway, he was representing Phil Green, and they wanted to buy. And I just said no. I said absolutely impossible. I said I've got orders for more than 64s because we marketed and sold them well, and every retailer placed their orders. And I said, I'm not going to give one person all the stock. No way. I don't need it. And he said, I can't fucking believe I can't spend 25 million quid. So I said, have you heard of the Plus 4? No. So I did a deal with him. Not only did I sell, I had to go back to Lasky's and renege on the deal because not only did we sell every single item that we could possibly make, we also went back to Queen's and we sold. And what happened was that we put the £99 pack together. They started selling it, and it was flying out the door pre-Christmas. And so we went back to them, and then we sold them every single dedicated peripheral that line had. Do you remember it was a dark grey colour? The monitors and the hard drives and everything was. We sold them, and printers. We sold them the works, right? We were doing cartwheels in the car park, right? Anyway, they were selling so well, he said, can you get us some more? So we got the whole world's inventory shipped to us. We assembled it and we sold it all to them. And of course the thing was, Christmas Day was absolutely fine. Everybody got 10 games to play and things. But a few days later, the shit hit the fan when they all tried to buy software and realised that it wasn't Commodore 64 compatible, and they never asked. So I didn't tell them. Oh yeah, and the result of that, by the way, is that I ended up, because there was a cap on the champagne, it was only for the amount that we had in the UK, I ended up with 144 bottles of champagne.
Well, we know you had a kind of unique look at the whole of Commodore, you and Colin, when you did the buyout deal. What were the kind of last things that they had that they were researching, and some of the new things that Commodore had in line?
Yeah, this for me is the biggest tragedy of all, is that the pricks who ended up buying the Commodore assets, they let go what was being developed by the engineers in Westchester, which is the most amazing thing I've ever seen. They were developing the chip which was codenamed Ombre, which is like motherfucker. And it was very well named because they had taken the basic HP RISC core chip, to which they added a blitter chip, a 3D rendering engine. They had a 5.1 surround sound stereo built into the chip, right? And other things that I can't even remember. But they showed, it was Dr. Ed Hepler who actually was designing all this. And he showed it to me working, emulated in software. You've never seen anything like it in your life. And there is nothing on the market today that comes even close. And this was in 1994. Now, how can you, they just let all the engineers go and all the products went. How can you do that? Criminal. So that was Ombre. Boy, we had some plans for that. The only thing is, of course, it would not have been Amiga backwards compatible. Impossible. But it wouldn't have mattered, because what they were going to produce and what we had plans for that was, was just staggering. And I just want you to remember one thing, that back in 1994, Colin and I, with the help of Coopers and Lybrand, I've got Ernst & Young on my mind at the moment because something I'm doing with Friend at the moment.
It's peaking a bit.
Colin and I with Coopers and Lybrand, way back in 1994, we raised $50 million. Now that was unbelievable. This is before the dot-com boom, but that was because the business plan that we put together was so solid and so realistic. And let me just explain about that. I won't tell you all the reasons, but we got cheated out of that because one of our investors was stolen from us 2 days before the auction, and they were half of the $50 million. Now we knew that we could have bought the assets we estimated about 15 million, and we were pretty accurate with that estimate. But we also knew that because there was no way that the new Commodore company, whatever we ended up calling it, would get any credit terms from the manufacturers of components, because they'd just been burned big time by Commodore. There's no way that they were going to give us credit terms. We knew we'd have to pay cash up front. That's why we did an estimate. We worked it out to the day that we reckoned it would take us 7 months to earn the right to get credit terms. So we costed everything, and we knew we needed $50 million. So you can imagine our sadness is I'm thinking of a much stronger word than that. When we had to not bid, even though we had 25 million, we know that if we'd have bid and bought within a few months, we'd have gone bust too. And how can you do that to people who invest all that money and faith in you? So we decided not to bid. But I just wanted to point out to you that based on the business plan, we raised $50 million. And that's pretty staggering. It's hard to do that today.
Well, let's talk about the good times at Commodore. I mean, every kid I knew at school, Christmas 1990, 91, everyone had the Batman pack. And that was kind of your crowning glory at Commodore, really, that pack that you put together. Where did the idea come from, and how did you approach putting that together?
Again, it was we had another new managing director came in, a guy called Steve Franklin. And he was from a business systems background. And when he walked into our offices, which was by then we were back in Maidenhead, the first thing he did was he fired everybody except 2 people from the business systems division and brought his own people in. He kept 2 people. One was a guy, Kieran Sumner, who was in charge of the Amiga 1000, which obviously was not a PC. And the other person he kept was a guy called Peter Talbot, who was in charge of education and did a very good job, actually. But he got rid of everybody else and brought his own team in. And for 2 weeks, absolutely for 2 weeks, he never spoke one word to me. Not a word. So anyway, one morning, 2 weeks later, he comes in, walks into my office, says, "Pleasance, my office?" "No." Okay, Steve. Sat me down. He said, "I just want to tell you," he said, "if I knew anybody who understood your side of the business, you toy boys, you wouldn't be here now." "Oh, thanks a lot, Steve. That's really encouraging, you know." He said, "No," he said, "I've got nothing against you. I don't know anything about you." He said, "But I've been told my brief is to start this whole thing all over again and get it more professional." He said, "So that's why I brought in all my own people that I can trust." He said, "So it seems to me I'm stuck with you. So if I'm stuck with you, here are my rules." And then he spent about 20 minutes spouting off about integrity and honesty and all this stuff, and everything which is, like my being. I had no problem with any of it. So anyway, he'd finished his bit of a rant, and I said, "I'll tell you what, Steve," I said, "I'll make a deal with you. You're in no position to make a deal with me." I said, "No, hear me out." I said, "I want to put a proposal to you that will either, if it works, will either bring in more business than anybody's ever seen, or it'll give you enough ammunition to get rid of me. What do you want to do?" So I said, "Okay, Steve," I said, "I want to completely change the ethos of the consumer division." I said, "Have a look," and I pointed to the Amiga sitting over in the corner. I said, "All that is a piece of plastic with some keys on it. That doesn't tell you or do anything." I said, "From now on, I do not want to sell computers, I want to sell dreams. I want to sell what the computer can give you, what it can do for you, how it can change your life. And the best way of doing that is to put a bundle together with lots of colour, lots of excitement, get the latest potential games, but very importantly, you must have productivity software in there as well. You must have a word processor, maybe an art package, so that it justifies the parents spending the money. Because they're all going to say, I'm buying it for my children's education, when we all knew that what they wanted was the games. So the whole concept of the Batman pack came up, is that we do not sell computers, we sell dreams. So I looked around and I discussed it with my team, and the product that was seeming to be the hot product everybody was talking about was that Ocean had just come back from Hollywood. They'd just signed and paid $1 million for the license just to write the game, Batman the movie. So I went to see the guys at Ocean, David and John, and David Ward and John Woods, and also Colin Stokes was in the room, Paul Patterson, and also Gary Bracey. So anyway, I said, right guys, I said, I'm now going to give you a proposition that you'll either have the balls to go with, or you'll send for the men in the white coats to come and take me away. What do you want to do? I said, right, I want to put a pack together which completely mirrors your marketing and your packaging for the Batman game. And I said, the fact that there is an Amiga in there will be really incidental. And I said, what I need you to, first of all, I want you, when the game is developed, I want you to give it to me for 2 months, only to me exclusively, before you sell it over the counter on its own. I said, I want to pay you tuppence for it, and I only want to commit to 10,000 pieces. So they said, send for the men in the white coats. Of course, I mean, why wouldn't you? But anyway, they said, look, we've got a couple of concerns. So first of all, we think our dealers will be upset if you have that product for 2 months. Secondly, as you know, we've just paid $1 million, and we've estimated it's going to cost us another $1 million to make the game. And we worked out the volume of sales that we need to make, and we're afraid that this activity will change those volumes. And they said, there are two major concerns. So I said to them, okay, well, I said, I think the dealers, they will be upset, but my guess is about 48 hours. Because if this works, the dealers are going to be selling a £400 product as opposed to a £40 product. And as a dealer, I know what I'd prefer to sell. Okay. Anyway, the net result is that I said to them, of course, I've got a massive advertising budget, which we had. And I said, our advertising will be absolutely in line with yours, and we'll work together with you and your designers so that all the packaging, everything is all matching. Anyway, they had the balls to go for it, and I will never forget that, because that took a lot of guts to do it. The net result was that, yes, the dealers were exactly 48 hours, and then they started to sell £400 Batman packs. They did get their numbers wrong. The volume that they'd estimated, they ended up selling 5 times more than their top estimate of sales. And I didn't end up taking 10,000 pieces from them. I ended up taking 186,000 pieces, because that's how many Batman packs we sold in 12 weeks to Christmas.
So, sorry to bring the tone down again, but we need to talk about the low-cost Amiga 300.
Oh dear. Oh dear, oh dear. Dear Mr. Mediali, illustrious leader, not. Now, the time came, as you know, we actually were doing bundles with the 64. Fabulous bundles with the 64. And we actually kept, in my opinion, we kept the 64 alive probably 2 years longer than its real sell-by date by doing the bundles. But I knew from the last Christmas, I can't remember the date now, but I knew from the sales that were really dying that there would be no more Christmas for 64. So I had a meeting with Mehdi Ali, and I said, right Mehdi, this is what we need. This is what the market needs right now. is we need a low-cost, entry-level Amiga product, as cheap, as cheerful as you can get it, but one that can be upgraded as people can afford it. Because my idea is to sell to the same socio-economic group who were buying the 64, sell them a low-cost Amiga. Now, the 64 was selling at £199. I said, I reckon we can probably get away with up to £249. But as long as it is upgradable, then I think we can switch that socio-economic group, the same buying group audience, to an entry level. So we call it the Amiga 300, which is clearly a lower model than the Amiga 500. Okay, and I said, so if you can do that, then I think we've got a winner on our hands. So anyway, we a few weeks later we had a meeting in Frankfurt, and everything was pretty much all agreed. The next thing I knew was that we took a whole shipment of Amiga 600s, arrived in our warehouse. The Amiga 600, as it was now called, cost more to manufacture than the 500. Right? They called it 600, which immediately killed all the 500 sales because everybody thought it is a better product, which it wasn't. And it meant that we killed all the 500 sales. The 600 was not a better product. Some people like it better than the 500, but in fact it wasn't better. And so we completely destroyed a product that we were making our biggest margin on by bringing out the 600, which killed the sales of the 500, on a product that we were losing money. We weren't losing money, we were making nowhere near as much money on. Now that is insanity, complete and utter insanity, completely different to what was requested. And I think you all agree, the idea of the Amiga 300 was the right idea. They didn't do it. But the most galling thing of all was that on all those first shipments of 600s, the motherboard says A300 on it. And that really pissed me off big time.
Now, before we give you guys a chance to ask your questions, I just want to talk about the final big product that you launched at Commodore, and you did a really high-profile launch for it, and that was the Amiga CD32.
Yeah, another Mediali specials. You know, the really sad thing is that, you know, in the 12 years I was with Commodore, the Amiga CD32 was the best, well, the only planned launch that was done properly, or should have been. We had actually, as you well know, the UK, we had developed fantastic relationships with all the software companies because of the bundles and the fact that, you know, we give them a high profile. And another thing that a lot of people don't know is that Commodore, we were the first hardware company to join FAST, Federation Against Software Theft, as an indication to our software developers that we supported them in their cause. Because if they all go bust because every time they spend $1 million on a game everybody copies it and nobody buys anything, it's a nonsense really. But anyway, we developed this really special relationship, and as a result of that we had seeded CD32 development kits into all the major games manufacturers, and they'd all signed an NDA, and incredibly every single one had stuck to them. Not one person let it be known that the CD32 was being developed on. And the idea was that we were planning to launch in the following spring, early summer, the CD32 with a whole host of games that were written especially for it. Now, Mediali comes along and fucks it up completely. And the reason he does, he says, I want all the additional sales that we're going to get from the 32 for Christmas. And I said, Medi, that's you're not thinking straight, because the CD32 will erode the sales of the 1200. You won't get double the revenue, you'll get less revenue, and in fact, you know, it could be an absolute disaster. Absolutely would not listen, because Commodore internationally was in big trouble. It was in financial trouble. But his answer was to double the sales while bringing out the CD32 earlier than it should have been. And believe me, I tried everything I could to fight it off. Was not given any opportunity. So then we decided, okay, well, we have no choice, we've got to launch it. So I had a fantastic team. My team were really, really great. And they came up with the idea of launching it in the Science Museum, which was superb. And I decided on September the 16th because the whole launch was based around this little thing that I came up with, which is 16 will never be the same again, because we're launching a 32-bit product as opposed to 16-bit. And so we booked the Science Museum. And then what happened is God would sometimes he does give wonderful things. About 2 weeks before the launch, there was an article in a PC magazine, and I'd give anything to try and track this article down, because I've tried, but it was definitely there. And it was an interview with Tom Kalinske, who was worldwide president of Sega. And the interviewer said to him, "Okay, what about 32-bit CD?" And he said, "Can't be done. If anybody could do it, it would be Sega, and it can't be done." And this was 2 weeks before our launch. Thank you, God. So, needless to say, we did a big voiceover for our launch. And in fact, I had Chris Evans, we appointed Chris Evans, who at that time was really an ascending star. He's turned out to be a bit of a prick since then, but anyway, in those days he was very much an ascending star. We were very good at things like that. I mean, I can't remember what product, but some years before I actually shared a stage with Jonathan Ross. So I mean, we were always pretty well switched on to who was up and coming, and yet wouldn't cost you a fortune. So we had all arranged for Chris Evans to come along, and then what happened was, within a few days of that Tom Kalinske article, a guy rang me up and he said, "Dave," he said, "you probably don't remember me. My name's XYZ. I honestly can't remember what it was." He said, "But you bought some poster sites from us. We got poster sites all over the country." He said, and he said, "I know you won't remember me." He said, "But I remember you." He said, "And you just got a certain way with people." He said, "Anyway, if I got a deal for you," he said, "I've got 3 96-sheet poster sites, that's the largest ones, in great locations in central London, that some months ago a client put 50% deposit on and paid, and now it's pulled out. So if you want them, you can have them for the 50% that's owing." Cracking deal. "Oh," he said, "and by the way, one of them is right outside Sega's head office." There is a guy. So anyway, I spoke to our agency, and they came up with this thing about Sega, whose advertising always used to be this good takes ages, and then be this good takes and spin the world around Sega. So they came up with this advert which said, "To be this good will take Sega ages." Because they'd said it themselves, so we were able to do it because it was true. And I mean, sometimes luck is on your side. And let's be honest about it, that went viral, and we hadn't even got an internet then. But that was pretty special, and I'm thrilled to bits about that. That was good.
Let's have a round of applause for David. Now, who's got some questions they'd like to ask? Just raise your hand. Yes, sir? Just shout out.
Are you surprised on the fan base that's still with Commodore now?
Yeah, it never ceases to amaze me. It is a cult following that, Commodore as a company doesn't deserve. The products do. Well, as a company, it doesn't deserve. Because I think I said to you right from the very beginning, Commodore never ever had a business plan. You wanted to look at some of the releases that they made, different products and things that nobody had ever asked for. They had no bloody clue whatsoever. So the company didn't deserve it. But the products definitely did. And I think the thing is that if we take the 64 as an example, it was the right product at the right time for that particular age group, and it got a lot of people at low cost into computing. And then the Amiga, of course, which when that was released, not so much the 1000 because it was out of everybody's reach, but when the 500 was launched, this changed the world because the product was so far advanced of its time, and it was affordable. And what I believe has happened, of course, is that it has spawned a whole a world full of people who are now often many of them in very high positions in big companies all around the world, and they owe that to the fact that the Amiga kind of got them into it. And so I think the products deserve the cult following. I just don't think the company did at all. That's a personal viewpoint. But I mean, I was under the radar after the demise of Commodore. I deliberately was under the radar. I was out of it. I had a whole different life entirely. And it wasn't until the Amiga 30 event in Amsterdam when they invited me to be a speaker. And then you realise that this life is there and it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. It's really quite stunning.
Anybody else?
Commodore 64 SX, what was your views on it? Why did they never make it into like a portable Amiga as well later on?
I mean, conceptually it was right, because nobody had done they hadn't done laptops or anything. This was a luggable. And I know it was a luggable because I carried the bloody thing around. And it was, it needed its own wheels, it was, the idea was right, but again, I think technology sometimes lags behind. Commodore was quite good in the early days of being ahead. And this all came about when they ended up buying their own chip manufacturing plant, which was not for computers initially anyway. But it just gave them that bit of an edge. But unfortunately, technology was lagging behind. And actually, it still does. Let's be honest about it. You look at the PCs, they're all the bloody same. Is there an outstanding PC?
No.
There isn't. So unfortunately, technology lags behind. And in fact, to be honest with you, I saw a laptop 386 years before laptops were produced that somebody had gone to the trouble of developing, but Commodore didn't want to proceed with it. And this was years ago, the 386.
Any more questions?
Just on the infamous Batman bundle and how that was really pioneering in terms of marketing and packing that in. Do you kind of think how you kind of pioneered that at the time and looking at modern day gaming systems, say how PS4 and Xbox One are always trying to get in the FIFA, and ever since then, FIFA, Destiny 2. Do you kind of take any kind of, within yourself, any credit in the fact that you think I've kind of pioneered this strategy of packing games that's continued to this day, essentially?
In a word, absolutely. Absolutely. They all followed. Sega and Nintendo, they all followed with doing packs. And yeah, that's great. I don't mind. I'm proud of it. And why not, what a lot of people don't even know is that we did a bundle for the PCs. The consumer division, I convinced Steve Franklin, that was at the time, let us do a pack for the PC. And let's see if we can sell it as a consumer product. And in those days, you remember you got your PCs and nobody even knew how to put them together because they came in bits. Nobody knew. So we had PC10, PC20 and PC30, and we produced a pack for each of them, and they had the design of the box was actual people in different jobs illustrated on the pack, so that it would relate to, if we had an electrician, we had a builder, we had a doctor, we had a professor, and so on, all on the pack, and so that people could relate to that this PC is meant for me and my job, sort of thing. And what we did is that the differentiation between the 10, 20 and the 30 was a coloured band around the edge. We had turquoise, pink and yellow, I think it was. It might have been purple, I can't remember the colours. And the idea was that all the peripherals were also, that matched it, were also colour-coded, so you couldn't go wrong. And inside the pack, we had a VHS video, because that's all there was at the time, and we had Tim Brooke Taylor, right, who actually was in this whole thing, and he was in his office with his girl, his secretary, and they were saying, oh, we're in a mess, we need to sort things out, and then he brings in this PC starter pack, and then they put it all together, and it's all on video to show you how to put everything together. Now that was pretty adventurous, and all I can tell you is that one of our dealers was also an IBM dealer, and he rang up one day and he said, David, I just want to let you know, IBM has just come in and bought one of each of your packs because they want to see what you're up to, So it's all about marketing, it's all about presenting. I think my success is that, and I've said this very openly, I am a technical dumbass. I know nothing about technicals, but I can tell you what something will do for you, the benefits it will bring you, and I can illustrate that in ways that people understand. That's my expertise, I guess. And at the end of the day, I don't know any great coders and technical people who are great salesmen, and vice versa. So I think there are, horses for courses per se. But yes, in answer to the question, I absolutely do. I know that we changed history with that, yes, I'm very proud of it.
Any more questions?
Yeah, so when the Commodore 64 came out, that was quite a big revolution, and then the Amiga 500, that was a huge step up from there. And then it went pretty quiet until the AGA chipset came out, which was quite a long time later. So were you working on that for all that time, or did something happen in the meantime that kind of kept that delayed?
Well, the truth of the matter is that they kept on producing products that were not in any way steps forward. Like after the 64, they released a 16, and the 128 was a step forward, albeit probably misguided, but it was a step forward. And then the plus 4 and all sorts of things, and they all made the engineers digress from what they should have been doing. The idea of a lower cost Amiga 1000, it took a long time for that to happen. And Jeff Porter, who was the guy who designed it, who, as I said earlier, is actually writing a chapter for my book. I can't wait to see it. He was not given any real help. It took a long time. But the whole basis of the engineering division was run based on people who didn't really know what they were doing. And so, as I said, again, it gets back to the fact, no business plan, you end up with no business, end of, And I'll tell you another story as well. At the same time as when I went to the States in that January, at the same time as Mehdi had recruited Bill Sidners, he recruited a guy whose name eludes me at the moment. I just can't think of it, as head of manufacturing, a new guy. And this guy said to Mehdi, right, forget Hong Kong, where we had a place, forget Singapore, forget Braunschweig. We'd already closed down the Corby factory, which is nonsense. He said, we need manufacturing in the Philippines. I thought to myself, hang on. How much business does Commodore do in the Far East? Do we do a lot? A little? Any? And we did no business. We were not selling into any of the Far Eastern countries whatsoever. And I said to myself, well, why on earth would anybody build a factory that is 4 to 5 weeks by sea from your main market with a product that has a limited lifespan in terms of the technology and new things coming out all the time? It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And do you know why this guy decided to convince Mehdi to set up in the Philippines? He had been working, his previous company, they had built somewhere in the Philippines. And he had a mistress there.
Yeah.
That's it.
Any more?
This guy's been waiting outside.
When that horrible A600 came out, Commodore sort of obsoleted the 500 and 500 plus range, but then all of a sudden, 6 to 12 months later, the A570 CD-ROM drive comes out for the A500 series. Was that Commodore making a massive blunder, or was it admittance that they got it wrong?
Yeah, of course. As I said, because they had no business plan. If you'd had a business plan, everything would have been sequenced,
Yeah.
and rightly so. I mean, and it's not rocket science, for goodness sake. It's not rocket science. But they just had new people coming in all the time with different ideas, and everybody said, stop developing that, do this. Without reason, without cause. Nonsense. Do you know, there was a whole load of 500 pluses that were sold into the market as 500s. People didn't even know there was a 500 plus inside, because we ran out of them. We ran out of 500s, and so we put the 500 plus in
The
instead.
first thing I got was the Cartoon Classics 500 plus, and so up there, that was my first machine.
Right.
Expecting a 500 and getting 500 plus, and like going, what's this?
Oh, I'd like to ask a favour. If anybody has got any good quality photographs of any of the packaging, could you send them to me?
Yeah.
Because
We've got nearly all the packaging here,
well,
in good quality as well, some of it.
well, in that case, if I can get some photos done, because it's really bizarre, but I'm facing the problem that all of the pictures I've got of the packs, even though we designed them and everything else, I may not have the right to publish them in the book.
Oh,
It's really crazy. I can put a disclaimer at the front of the book and all of that. But if I can actually get photographs of something that I can prove, came from me, from the book, then it would just save my backside.
Yeah, we can do that.
Yeah, that'd be
But
fabulous.
most of it, I mean, imagine we've got most of the packs there.
I bet you haven't got a PC starter pack, have you?
We have got a piece. We've got something. I can't remember which one we've got. We've got one of them.
Oh, that would be brilliant. Oh, yes, I forgot to tell you about the PC starter pack. I must finish this story. We had no budget for it because it was not a consumer product, and I'd spent all my consumer budget, and we needed to make this packaging look good. And as I said, we wanted to put all these photographs of people actually working on the outside of the pack. We couldn't afford to pay any models, so it's all my staff and me, all dressed up and all photographed. I'm on that pack as a professor, and that's all my staff. I promise you, and nobody knows that.
Any more questions?
It's only a quick one. I don't recall a 1200 advert on TV. You had the 600, the 500.
We didn't. We'd run out of money.
Well, yeah, that's what I thought. It's probably a quick one. But would that have changed, like the 1200 marketing, if there was? It wouldn't have done.
The 1200 market was absolutely fantastic. Well, the orders were all in, and it wasn't until in September, at the insistence of Mediali, that we launched the CD32. It destroyed it. Everything, all the sales were in place, every Dixons and Comet and Currys had all placed all their orders for the 1200, and we didn't need, the impetus was all there. We did have some budget, but we had to allocate stuff to the bloody 32 launch that we didn't want to do, We had to pay Chris Evans, for example, or rather,
What was your favourite advert? The 600 one or the 500 advert?
Well, that's a tough. That's a tough question. The advert that I really liked, and again I can't even find a copy of it, I can't find a record of it anywhere.
Sorry, Sunshine on a Rainy Day.
No, the one was the teddy bears.
Hey?
Yeah, see, it was the very first advertisement TV commercial we ever did for the Amiga was done, and of course it wasn't using the Amiga to produce a commercial because it couldn't quite do the animations that were on this thing. It was Evans Hunt Scott was the name of the agency who produced this commercial, and it was all about teddy bears. Fabulous advertisement, but I can't even track it down. Evans Hunt Scott have gone, so I can't.
I've got one more question as well, which was seeing we're in a unique place here, Leicester Retro Computer Museum. They've got the CD1200, which is one of the only ones in the world. Do you remember this product, David?
Yeah, as I said to you, the CD32 was in fact the first properly planned, until they screwed it up, changed it. It was the first properly planned launch, and the CD1200 was part of it, because it makes very good sense if you want to produce something as an add-on. It's an absolutely ideal thing to do. But of course, it all got screwed up because, well, we all know what happened. They spent all their money, including, get this, they covered their own arses. They took out, they called in our insurance agent, I can't remember the name, and they did a deal with the insurance company which was non-cancelable, non-revocable, non-changeable in any way, shape or form, that it would protect the officers and directors of Commodore from prosecution and cover their expenses, for which they paid $5 million. And that $5 million was, of course, creditors' money. They had no right to spend it. And I'm really annoyed because it protected and paid for the costs of defending themselves. Bernard van Tienen, who was Commodore GM of the Netherlands, who was a crook from the very beginning, and he was one of the directors of ESCOM, and he got prosecuted, but of course everything was paid for by this bloody insurance policy, and so did Petro Dichenko. Got prosecuted, but it was all paid for by this insurance policy that was spent with creditors' money. And I wish Petro Dichenko had been sued his arse off. End of story.
Well, people may not know. I mean, obviously, some people in the room, I imagine, will, but you're actually still involved in the technology industry today.
Oh yes, I'm a very, very lucky boy. I mean, incredibly lucky. Thank you, Lord. I only asked 13 seconds a day and you listened. Yeah, I went to the Amiga 30 event in Amsterdam, and it was my first appearance in public, well, since the demise of Commodore. And I didn't know what to expect, and I got on stage and I did my speech, and seemed to go down pretty well. And when I got off stage, I was approached by two gentlemen who were there that I'd never met before, and they were Norwegian guys, and they have a company called Friend. It's Friend Software Corporation, and they have a product called Friend Up, Friend Unifying Platform. Anyway, it turns out that the main, the architect and the founder of the company, a very young guy called Hogner Titlerstad, he learned everything on the Amiga. And in those days, I was in all the magazines, as you probably know, putting a face to Commodore. And apparently I was his hero. It's a bit embarrassing, but I'm just telling you like it is. Anyway, he was there with this product called Friend, and because essentially Friend, it comes from that he took the best features of the Amiga operating system and brought it into the 21st century in a way like you just can't believe. It's now cloudified, it's web-based, it's unbelievable. These two guys will tell you how fantastic it is. But anyway, as I said earlier on, I'm a technical dumbass. But anyway, they started talking to me and telling me about this product. And somehow, I got it. I got what they were saying to me. And they said, would you join this company? Would you head up sales and marketing? And it was like manna from heaven. How can I turn it down? Because the product is phenomenal. And so yes, I said right away. And I've been with them now for just over 2 years. And we've launched 1.0.0 about 2 or 3 months ago. And we're currently in the middle, we've just written a white paper. We're currently in the middle of joining the blockchain, cryptocurrency, decentralized computing world. And we were in Cancun, Mexico a couple of weeks ago at the Ethereum conference. It was hell, but somebody had to do it, you know, you can imagine. And we've been accepted by everybody. And we announced on Thursday that we are working with a company called Golem, who are developing decentralized computing. And I think I said to you earlier on that I'm really good at explaining things in a non-technical way. My way of explaining what Golem do is think of, they are the Airbnb of computers. And what that means is that when you are asleep at night and you've got a computer in your home doing nothing, with your permission of course, they will utilize your computer, link it with thousands of others, and then do all this mass work. They'll do 3D rendering, they'll do Bitcoin mining and all these other things. So that's an easy way of explaining what they're doing. Anyway, we met with Golem. They're a Polish Warsaw-based company, and in fact they invested in Friend quite substantial money. And it was in that we did the announcement on Thursday that we are working in cooperation with each other, and we will be having our ICO to raise money will be in January the 7th. But we're actually doing our pre-sale sometime early next month, in December. And I'm not allowed to tell anybody that you should invest, but no, this Friend is phenomenal. But as I said, I'm not a technical person, so let me get Dan and explain it to you, and then Barry.
Essentially, like David said, it's a cloud-based operating system that essentially it's decentralized computing. You can access your files, your programs on any platform, any device. So it kind of solves a problem that we've still got today. We have different games consoles, for example, different operating systems. Rather than having Windows, Linux or Mac, it essentially ties everything together and just allows you to run anything on any platform that you've got. So it solves a problem, especially for developers. Solves a really big headache, I think, doesn't it?
Yeah, and there's quite a few old Amiga heads involved. We've got Francois Lynette, who did the Amos program, and Dave Haney was also talking for quite a while with us, and you know, it's really interesting because there's loads of really creative people.
We got Paul Lasser.
Oh yeah.
Sorry. So we got Paul Lasser, who he was the he designed the 4000. He's working for us and is an investor in San Francisco. Colin Proudfoot, who was my co-managing director in the UK, he's an investor and is working for us in the States. The reason we've been talking with Dave Haney is that we have an idea for some hardware. We will never ever ourselves get involved in hardware, but we want to design and get somebody else to manufacture it. And I've been talking to Dave as recently as yesterday, because if anybody could design something that the kind of product that we're looking for, he's the man. And he's very interested. So these people are not involved for no reason. They're involved because this product, watch my lips, this product will change history. I promise you.
Well, we are going to hang around for the next few hours if anyone's got any questions about Commodore, about Friend. David's book should be out early next year, Commodore The Inside Story it's going to be called. Can't wait to read those stories. The closer we get to the book release, the more juicy David's stories tend to get. It's pretty amazing. But let's have a round of applause for David Pleasance. Thank you, David.
And let's have a round of applause for Leicester Retro Computer Museum. Should I put some tunes on?
Yeah. Come in.
What about the tunes? Very, very nice to hear you all singing. Share the time like that, you know, sit down. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah, vaguely, yeah.
It's been a while.
I was probably pissed.
It was in the morning. You were